When we talk about Battle Through the Heavens, or BTTH as we all know it, we're not just talking about a Donghua. We're talking about a series that defined an era of Chinese animation. For so many fans, Xiao Yan's journey wasn't just another cultivation story. It was personal. It was about proving yourself when the world doubted you, about falling and rising again, and about chasing the impossible with nothing but willpower and fire in your heart. And that's exactly why the fall of BTTH feels so painful. It's not just about the animation quality, not just about the business side. It's the fact that the soul of the story, the very characters and relationships that made us fall in love, has been chipped away, one careless rewrite at a time. So let's go back for a moment. Let's remember why this series was special. Xiao Yan's story begins with humiliation. Once a genius, suddenly reduced to nothing, laughed at, abandoned, treated like a failure. It's a classic setup, but what made it resonate wasn't just the cultivation or the flashy battles. It was the feeling. Xiao Yan stood for everyone who had ever been underestimated, who had ever been kicked down and told they'd never rise again. His climb back to glory wasn't just about Do Qi levels, it was about determination, resilience, and never giving up. The early seasons struggled visually, sure, but once the 3-year agreement arc came, everything changed. This was the moment. Cailin Yanran versus Xiao Yan wasn't just a duel. It was a clash of pride, revenge, and destiny. For 3 long years, Xiao Yan carried the weight of mockery and doubt. Every ounce of training, every scar, every drop of sweat led to this showdown. And when it happened, it delivered. The animation peaked. The background music sent chills down our spines. Slow motion shots, detailed expressions, the crackling energy of Xiao Yan forming the angry Buddha lotus flame, all of it felt larger than life. Fans who had read the novel already knew the outcome, but still, the tension was real. Watching Xiao Yan stand victorious was like watching ourselves finally prove the world wrong. That was BTTH at its peak. That was when it felt untouchable. But BTTH wasn't just Xiao Yan's story. If there was one character who elevated the Donghua to legendary status, it was Queen Medusa. From the moment she appeared, Medusa dominated the screen. She wasn't a side character or just a love interest. She was a force. Fierce, commanding, impossibly charismatic. Her design, her voice, her aura, everything about her screamed queen. She wasn't the damsel, she wasn't the trophy. She was someone who could stand beside Xiao Yan, equal and untouchable in her own right. Fans adored her. Merchandise with Medusa sold out instantly. People started calling her the Goddess of Donghua. She wasn't just a fan favorite, she was the heartbeat of the series. And that's why the later treatment of Medusa feels like the ultimate betrayal. Scenes cut, her importance downplayed, her story rewritten to feel meaningless. Even Xiao Yan and Medusa's daughter, Xiao Xiao, a vibrant, crucial part of the novel, was stripped of her personality in the Donghua, reduced to a silent background figure fans sarcastically nicknamed Mute Xiao. The romantic tension, the emotional weight of their bond, the bittersweet struggle of their relationship, it all crumbled. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't followed BTTH from the beginning just how much this hurts. It's like taking the soul of the story, the emotional anchor, and tossing it aside. And it wasn't just Medusa. Yun Yun was another victim of careless rewrites. In the novel, and even in the early adaptations, Yun Yun was Xiao Yan's first deep emotional connection. Their bond was complicated, fragile, full of respect and unspoken affection. When Xiao Yan risked everything to save her, when Yun Yun stood torn between her sect and her heart, those were the moments that made BTTH feel human. But then came that infamous line, Yun Yun looking at Xiao Yan and saying, "We just met." Years of build-up. Countless emotional beats. Gone. Erased in an instant. That single scene became the symbol of everything fans feared, that the production no longer cared about continuity, character development, or emotional payoff. That they were willing to throw away the very foundation of BTTH for the sake of convenience. What followed only deepened the disappointment. Fights that once had weight and meaning turned into repetitive clashes with recycled animations. Character models that had once been polished and expressive became stiff and downgraded. Xiao Yan's journey, once layered with struggles and triumphs, started to feel mechanical, almost hollow. It wasn't that BTTH lacked talent. We all saw what the team was capable of during the 3-year agreement, during Song of Sand, during those Medusa-centered arcs. We know the brilliance is possible. And that's exactly why it hurts. Because the fall wasn't caused by limitations of skill, it was caused by choices. Choices to cut corners, to change what didn't need to be changed, to strip away the emotional heart of the story. The result. Fans walked away. Communities that once thrived turned into battlegrounds of defenders and critics. Ratings plummeted from the high 9s down to 5s. Even piracy sites, which usually upload anything, started refusing to host new BTTH episodes. Think about that. A series that once carried the pride of Chinese animation now reduced to a warning label, watch with caution. At the core of it, here's why BTTH's decline feels like betrayal. It gave us hope. It gave us characters we cared about, arcs that inspired us, and relationships that made us cry. It proved that Chinese animation could stand tall, even rival Japanese productions. And then, instead of building on that foundation, it tore it down. Medusa's downgrade. Yun Yun's erasure. Xiao Zhao's silence. The rewriting of rules, from alchemy systems to major plotlines, that destroyed the logic of the world itself. When you love something this much, seeing it reduced to a hollow version of itself isn't just disappointing, it's heartbreaking. So here we are, as fans, asking ourselves the question, what happened? How did a Donghua that once stood at the peak of the industry stumble so badly? Was it just poor creative choices? Or was there something deeper, something behind the scenes that dragged the series down? Because if we look closely, the decline of BTTH isn't only about characters and storylines. It's about money, ownership, and the tug-of-war between studios and publishers. And that's where the story gets even messier. The truth is, BTTH isn't just a Donghua. It's a franchise, and franchises exist to make money. The Donghua earns through super VIP subscriptions, regular VIPs, ads, sponsorships, and TV distribution. Add offline revenue like toys, merchandise, and the best-selling manhwa and light novel, and you have an IP that should be swimming in cash. In fact, super VIP numbers alone brought in millions weekly. Funding wasn't the problem. The problem was ownership. Unlike some Donghua where one company holds full control, BTTH's rights are scattered across multiple players. The author, Tian Do, still holds certain creative rights. Tencent owns part of the adaptation rights and produced the two best arcs, the Desert Arc and the 3-year agreement. Motion Magic Studio handles most of the 3D animation. And then came Yuewon, a new player that suddenly seized control and promised annual releases. At first, that sounded great. No more multi-year delays. Weekly episodes, like clockwork. But the catch was obvious. Weekly releases on tight deadlines meant the episodes could never match the cinematic quality of the 3-year agreement. Instead of months of polish, the studio had days. Instead of grand set pieces, we got average 16 to 17-minute episodes stretched thin. Fans got more BTTH, but they lost the quality that made them fall in love. And then there's Medusa. Why was she sidelined? The theory is legal. Because Medusa's character is partially owned by Tencent. And Tencent already used her in their own projects, including a live-action movie. If Yuewon didn't want to pay Tencent licensing fees or share profits, the easiest solution was to quietly cut her role. It wasn't because she lacked importance, it was because she was expensive. This is where Tian Do's gamble backfired. Instead of keeping the rights consolidated, he split them across multiple corporations. Tencent here, Motion Magic there, Yuewon later. More companies meant more money up front, but also more chaos down the line. Suddenly, every studio had its own agenda. Tencent wanted polished prestige arcs. Yuewon wanted weekly output. Motion Magic had to stretch itself thin trying to please everyone. And the result was a Frankenstein production, torn between different masters. Fans often say BTTH feels industrialized now, and they're right. It used to feel alive. Every frame brimming with passion, every fight carrying weight. Now it feels like a factory product. Recycled models, repetitive choreography, shallow dialogue. Even Xiao Yan's growth, once layered with pain and perseverance, began to feel mechanical. That's what happens when you put speed before soul. The tragedy of BTTH is that it shows what happens when artistry collides with corporate greed. On one side you had Tencent, aiming to make BTTH the crown jewel of Chinese animation. On another, Yuewon, pushing constant output. The author chasing profits by dividing rights. And the studio, Motion Magic, stuck in the middle. It was like 4 generals giving different commands to the same army. No matter how strong the soldiers, the war ends in chaos. But before we bury BTTH completely, there's still a flicker of hope. As of 2025, work began on the final showdown between Xiao Yan and Hun Tiandi. This climax is rumored to be prepared not just for streaming, but for theaters. Which means budget, stakes and quality are on another level. If true, it could give BTTH the chance to close on a high note, with a finale that reminds us why we loved it in the first place. So where does that leave us? For me, BTTH will always be special. Xiao Yan's rise from humiliation to greatness, Medusa's commanding presence, Yun Yun's complicated bond, those moments are burned into my memory. And no amount of corporate mishandling can erase them. But the fall still hurts. It hurts because BTTH showed us what Chinese animation could achieve, and then showed us how quickly it could collapse under pressure. It hurts because it betrayed characters who deserved better, and fans who stood by it through years of ups and downs. Is there hope for redemption? Maybe. If the finale delivers, if the Xiao Yan vs Hun Tiandi fight truly goes all out, it could close the story with dignity. It won't erase the mistakes, but it could give us closure. And for many fans, that might be enough. In the end, Battle Through the Heavens gave us goosebumps, cheers, and tears. It also gave us frustration and heartbreak. But that's the reality of loving a long-running series. Sometimes, the fire burns bright, and sometimes it flickers. What matters is the impact it leaves behind. For me, BTTH will always be a reminder that even when the heavens fall, the fire in your heart can always rise again. So what about you? Did you feel betrayed when Medusa was sidelined? Did Yun Yun's rewrite make you want to throw your screen across the room? Or are you still holding out hope that the final fight will redeem it all? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown of BTTH, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more deep dives into the world of Donghua. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate, and keep fighting through your own heavens.